People of Reddit who knew celebrities before they were famous. How different do they act now? Hi Reddit guys. Subscribe now, or I call the police. My grandpa, Rip, owned a grocery store in Miami in the late 70s. Wesley Snipes and his friends once stole some candy from his store, and when he caught them he let them have it. Since then Wesley and his friends were regulars. Once, Wesley left his bike in front of the store and it got stolen. Was a pretty bad area. My grandpa gave him his old bike that he kept in the back of the store. My uncle took over in 2001 when my grandpa died. In 2007 he came back to the store while my uncle and cousin were there to ask about my grandpa. My uncle said they talked for a little over an hour about how my grandpa treated him like a son. When he found out my grandpa passed he felt guilty he didn't visit sooner. He embraced my uncle and cousin and left. My uncle said he told him they planned on having the building repainted while they talked. About a week later a crew of painters arrived and told my uncle they were already paid to have the building repainted. Such a genuine dude. This is awesome. You hear so much about how disconnected he is and just smokes a ton, but it's nice to hear he remembers those who helped him in the past. I haven't read up on it in a while, but I think it was Ricky Gervais who pointed this out. If you look into the Wesley Snipes tax scandal, you will find he actually didn't do anything wrong. He was getting robbed by his money manager, and when he went to the authorities to report it, the liability for unpaid taxes still fell on Wesley Snipes. Pretty messed up. The media just reported Snipes goes to prison for tax evasion. I went to school with Rupert Grint, Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. I was into acting too, so we had done a few school plays together. He was really nice, very chill, a good laugh. I haven't seen him since school days, but he kept coming to classes whenever he wasn't filming, was always happy to chat about the movies. Sometimes he'd need a little break from so many people wanting to talk, and would come and hang out in the library, and honestly, you'd never know he was in the biggest film series at the time. Honestly, I think a lot of these answers boil down to if they want fame or not. Rupert loved what he was doing, but didn't care about being famous and having people kiss his ass. Just a nice normal kid. He used to live in a town not too far from me. Everyone seemed to think he was a recluse and a bit of a moody prick. But I think, like you said, it can be tiring having people come up to you all the time, and he probably reasonably wanted some quiet for himself. A bit of the casting was done not far from where I grew up, the Weasley twins and Draco. My sister's claim to fame was that she once sat at a table in school that Tom Felton, Draco, had scratched his name into. A table at school that Tom Felton, Draco, had scratched his name into. Crumb just rolled over in his sleep unexpectedly and mumbled something about Grindelwald's mark. I live in the town where Dolly Parton grew up, and practically everyone above the age of 50 who grew up here claims to either be a distant relative of Dolly's, or they claim to know her in some way. Everyone has their story of the time they met Dolly. It's pretty obvious, but regardless of who you talk to, Dolly has always been sweet and generous. But everything has simply grown exponentially due to her fame. Examples are the millions of books she gives out for free to children around the globe each month, or how she gave out $10,000 cash to many of my close friends after their houses burned in a fire a couple years back. Thousands of people are employed here and work for one of the businesses she owns, and it's a tad strange to see when you walk in, but the birthing center at the local hospital is funded by and named after her. I honestly can't think of one person I know who doesn't like her. Dolly's heart has only gotten bigger because of fame. My grandmother worked at Dollywood for many years and met Dolly a handful of times. When she died, Dolly sent 24 or so roses to the funeral home. She's a real gem. My Phil worked for a high-end business in Southern California in the 80s, and he ended up running straight into Dolly as he was rushing out a swinging door at the same time she was walking in. As he says, she chest bumped me from 5 feet out, but as he was apologizing profusely she cut him off and said, "It's okay Dolan, but next time you wanna get physical try buying me a drink first." Then she winked and started giggling as she went on her business, and him and his 2 co-workers who saw it happen have been smitten with her ever since. He met some other celebs working there, but goddamn, that's the one I'll always be jealous of. If anybody deserves to be America's sweetheart, it's Dolly. Build that statue of Dolly. My grandfather taught Jack Nicholson in high school math class. Said he was rebellious, but wasn't too bad at math. Maths teachers care more about the numbers than the rebellion. If you look at them just right, rebellion can be found in the numbers. My mum used to ride the bus to work in downtown Cleveland with Steve Harvey's first wife. Apparently she supported him while he was trying to get his career started. And then basically as soon as he got successful he divorced her for a younger woman. My mum always hated him because she felt that he treated his first wife like it and always yells bastard at the TV when he pops up. I've never heard a story about Steve Harvey that makes him seem like even a slightly good person. I know a number of people who've worked on his TV show who don't have very nice things to say about him, other than he's hilarious when they're doing breaks for production. Apparently he's a Cologne man as well. My buddy used to tell me he's in the building, because you could smell him 100 feet away. Honestly he has that vibe. Older people tend to put too much on anyhow for whatever reason, but he always seemed to me to be one of those dudes who leaves a scent trail. Some people leave their mark on the world. Others leave a stain. A friend of mine is buddies with Paul Rudd. Says he's exactly the same and a great human. Exactly the same, because he hasn't aged at all in like 20 years. When I went on a holiday to LA, This Is 40 was about to premiere. I was maybe 18 at the time. My mother and I got into our hotel's elevator, and there stood Megan Fox and Paul Rudd. My mother was going off, full Karen, about how silly it was that they blocked off roads in this town for a premiere of a hit movie. She had zero clue who they were. I knew. We three gave each other wry smiles as my mother went off on the film and the road etc. for a few minutes before telling them to have a nice day. My mother-in-law was at a very fancy dinner party and didn't realize she was sitting next to Orlando Bloom and Katy Perry. She turned to them and asked, "So what do you do?" She's very chatty and clueless about celebs and genuinely had no idea who they were. We all love retelling that story at family dinners. My co-worker's dad grew up with Queen Latifah in North Jersey. His whole family loves her because they were about to lose their house. So, she paid it off for them. They've never said a bad thing about her. Queen Latifah, if this gets back to you, thanks for what you did for your friends in NJ. Phil's a really cool guy. People laugh when I tell them she's my #1 celebrity crush. My wife is a very petite Caucasian blonde and she always jokes that I went the exact opposite direction. I had a friend in high school whose cousin is Kendrick Lamar. He's said Kendrick's pretty much still the same guy, acts the same around friends and family, just with millions of dollars now. I totally believe that. Allegedly he visits his old high school all the time to the point where it's normal to see Kendrick climb the halls. Was this the cousin that you killed back in 1994? Frick your truce. When I was really young I'd go the reptile park, originally owned by Bob Irwin and passed on to his son Steve. Steve was always nice, would do all the lizard and croc shows, would hang out and chat afterwards. My dad would take me there occasionally and Steve would seem to remember us. Treated everyone like an old buddy. This was before he became famous obviously, and the small reptile park became the Australia Zoo. In my final year of high school I got in the zoo for work experience and they let me stay on. Steve was rarely there, and when he was he'd avoid guests, because they would swarm him and he'd get nothing done. But when I did run into him he was always super nice and still acted like that old friend. Didn't say crikey nearly as much as you'd think. That's definitely something Aussies say, but he really played that up for the cameras as his catchphrase. Unfortunately he died later that year, so right up till the end he was just a lovely person. Jack Black is the same person he was as a teenager, funny, kind, caring, and spreading that joy of music. Fun fact. Jack Black used to put wires up his sleeves when he was a kid in the hopes that other kids would notice them poking out and think he was bionic. I put wires up my sleeve and I wanted the wires just to peek out a little bit so that if any kids noticed my wires I would say, "It's nothing, it's nothing." They would think I was bionic. because my logic was that I was trying to hide my bionics from them. What guy? That's like the next level of when you're 7 with your mum at the grocery store and bored out of your mind, so you pull your arms into your shirt and pretend you're an amputee and hope people will notice. I convinced my parents to buy me a fake cast from a Halloween store when I was about 11. I insisted on sitting with my broken arm resting on the open window, hoping someone would look at the poor kid with the broken arm. I don't think I've ever told anyone that before, and I feel just a tiny bit insane now. In my mid-teens, I, a girl, would sit staring off poignantly into the distance whenever my crush was around, because your fiction taught me moody, mysterious girls were attractive. A close family friend was best friends with Tom Cruise before he got famous. I didn't believe her, and she showed me pictures they have taken together, like a Vegas road trip, camping, etc. He was really awesome. But as soon as he got an ounce of fame, it went to his head and he became very arrogant and a fame whore. Don't forget a cultist. That came later. She could have been cult leader. Opportunity missed. My dad went to the same youth group as Tom Cruise in Kentucky and smoked pot with him. Apparently Cruise bogarted the joint, so he wasn't a big fan of him even before he got famous. Okay Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I call the police.